Hello, dear Fox News. You have a famous actor. I'm going to try to find the clip of it saying people shouldn't speak. They pretend our voice is about democracy. The Democrats pretend crazy things with physical delusions as rules crimes predators. But so are the Republicans. So are these news agencies' narratives regarding socialism and capitalism, regarding communism, regarding isms. They have roles with people. They have roles with people all tied in a pattern to predicate acts that were on my grammar school. Real fast instances, tricks that put illusions in. Everyone speaking through others dishonestly. Where and how police forms, plural, were and are involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack. And since, with a whole bunch of other nations, all private, investigations of everything, even insurance. Then you bring up those identity of the ground locations. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones. You sound crazy. And they value that. Because hundreds of nations and cultures know at once. They had little representatives that were roles with suits and ties fake. Colonization trap here. Against our founders. As the fact, cheap in nature slavery of our founders. As the identity theft and fraud against our founders. As uses of a narrative that is tied to databases. That is tied to where everyone's going to say on and off the databases. Sickly, distinctly, criminally foreign influenced. Everyone's premises treatments even. Sickly, distinctly, criminally foreign influenced. So much so that effectively that kept screened. How sickly, non-distinctly. And that's where we have the all. The entire country's A1 through Z, however many. Even could be invented, where you still have the same enemy from some ancient times. This just reminds. Databases are recorded, self-valued, having been criminally foreign influenced, and roles with negative value nature progressions acts themselves. I mean, the summary convictions of the stewards of our books, seen through time, blaming on other things other than selves, that which is actually recorded. See, so they have theories offensively. Critical race theory is also recorded and involved with actually recorded remote uses as victims of Connecticut interbranch, private, black and white, males and females sickly distinctly, and sickly distinct, including judges at all ages, because of their roles with uses of the locations together, per a method /S. And when people try to tell on it after, or at any time, there's adaptation that's also communicated relative also to what is and as what is simultaneous. That is increasingly with revelations when science is used to observe it properly and honestly and not pretending honesty. See, pretended honesty while being dishonest, that's sustained, also has all sequence shifts sustained because it hands people the means to blame on other things other than themselves, with what arrays of people have a collusion with. So people, in other words, they're offensively making theories. The same medical families, even the ones not with the kids, they're tied to them with locations. They have ties to the locations next to schools, next to post offices. Uses of homes that may even, I don't know, whether, in other words, intercities, ones next to them, in collusion leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since. Central Connecticut State University has a number of ties to people associated with Cuba, involved with identity thefts and frauds against me with Wethersfield Police and the Wethersfield Interbranch. Also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacities, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and then formally leading up to because of the World Trade Center, because of the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, and the people associated with him with that, with post-dated documents presented to the Ninth Circuit had been post-dated from inside the court, proven after. So they appeared late to the panel of judges right before the World Trade Center attack, which is right next to it, note, which also has a whole bunch of ties to the Scalora family and people with CIA and FBI recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved intercities through time, on and off campuses with predicate acts, and with mayors, election spots, election locations. The same, the election lie, making it one thing, is being used to get over. In other words, they're trying to describe other people as crazy on a mass scale, where there's just a miscommunications on a mass scale. There is also what is actually being spoken being replaced with fabricated audio and video, including over the wire, including WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, the NBC Connecticut News, other news involved intercities through time, even when with their social relationships to each other, playing softball with a Weathersfield Park. Also involved with them with various natures of drugs and medicines crimes through their identity thefts and frauds, falsified police sports roles, forging name switching, wire crime methods roles. But I have them respond to the letters I sent, or a letter I sent. They're being coached to the wire crimes of the judges and the prosecutors in the background because in other words, they're guilty with the other locations. They were needing to hide as victims too, but as victim predators since witch trials. That crazy system that to all locations database is oriented further and further to all locations. Each standing age of correlation nature needing to hurt what goes right through correlation, each age of fact sheet nature. So it's kept discorrelation and correlation self-value leveraged against. Actually, native pure, which as the Constitution unabridged. What's not just correlation, but discorrelation. The perfect world leads science, not theory. Not theory consciously used for identity thefts and frauds. Consciously used to self-value roles with all these different agencies. They want to feel good about themselves anyway. They can't explain what predicate acts are about legitimately. They're lawyers. The ones with badges and doctors and guns and doctors. And roles with the courts. It's all victim predators still. Delusions wrought when they speak about black and white. Then they have to pretend other. So they pretend to be about racism. You can't do that and afford to discern how American history is about how hundreds of nations, different cultures, were all roles with a breaching method, an archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police form, I'm not a criminal. Lawyers too. Originally still, they're still fabricating audio and video roles with the predicate acts delivery system methods of the branches individually grouped and together used remotely. Further than that, because it was already used remotely before that with locations uses, the roles with identity thefts and frauds as little kids, as class placement roles, because no one's paying attention to the also the word criminal is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. These are news that are attaching me and others to fake words and locations through our lifetimes. They make people fight because everyone is forced to speak through others, and no one fathomed the extent of it. And then people are going to say whatever about their relatives, and they're trying to pretend they're using that as evidence. Consciously. That's what's actually recorded. So to get away with that, they use time simultaneously too fast, too slow, while preventing writing and pretending there were exceptions into databases. They're forging names, switching names, not just sequences. Connecticut courts before the World Trade Center attack, as the ones interstates also involved with Orlando and and Miami, the ones involved with Cubans, with Central Connecticut State University in a number of ways. Also involved with the locations around Hartford Hospital. People involved with untimely deaths, with various natures and their consciousness. So they have all these agencies and judges and their family members involved with filming things. So they pretend there was something before that was never there. So they pretend they know the kids in the age groups, because those were already these. This was sophistication here since before our founding parents were born, with no free speech. That's what they left us to use correlation / discorrelation to say for themselves. George Washington could tell no lie. He didn't want slavery. Anybody sold doesn't want slavery. See, we have a minority from every country are the ones they needed. But in other words, they didn't plot it. They were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, taken as Oz, to defend sciences, therefore to defend fact treatment nature as a human identity volume science in ways that nature would, the breaching method, the archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will, knew that nature would demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures. That means identities. I'm saying why don't you say identities instead of natures then? So watch the tone when people try to debate. There's a quality of fact treatment nature for us, because an identity is nature because it has a relationship to what is positive and to what is negative simultaneously. It also has a semi-nature relationship to the order of that identity of volume, that is three, as individuals grouped and human species, not invented, revealed before us, but as us. That's science. That's not using theory. That's observable. See, we have theory offensively into sciences, uses of names, and everyone when they're arguing, or when they think they're arguing, they're using names. And they're using psychology's terms like subconscious. They're all consciously, subconsciously nuts. Everybody A through Z, speaking about logic. And what really is not admitting the worst and torture method employed by the breaching method before our founders, tactically denatured identity of the ground locations and relationships to it, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that would be blamed on other things, others themselves. And with that consciously being maintained. So it could be maintained, sustained, therefore self-value. Therefore, the whole time nobody realizing they're using premises treatments that are delusions, wrought, criminally foreign influence, increasingly incapable of defending themselves, the time treatments and stuff like that, rightfully as victims, well, no other way to think. Increasingly incapable of affording what is native pure, to have free speech, that which is the Constitution unabridged. See Chief. See how the Native Americans, that's the Native Americans, because that's the human system that's still never liberated. So, worse than, there are people with theories offensively pretending they don't understand things, and that other people are the ones that aren't understanding it, because they know their wealth there are natures of wealth that are all ulterior from the nature of wealth that was forced inside our forced founders' roles. And that you have to understand, Marbury versus Masson, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. Unquote, per my father's definition of Marbury versus Masson, or that's what he read it. My father's an accomplished pro se litigant. And a union and job sites expert. And I'm an expert on those same job sites, unions, roles also recorded, involved, like, for example, in a project I did, because of confessions from strangers who were going out of their way to make confessions and statements to me about others that I don't know, including not having known them then or now. And so I recorded that, for example, with a Fred Grisette. Years later, an Antonella Spada and other boyfriends of hers confirmed, confessed, recorded, demonstrated. Also, the father of some brothers from my town. I never had a class with any of them, and they were in different grades. I think one of them was in my grade. A Delaferra family. They're involved with probate court judges in other countries, and on and off town line drives and shopping centers. And they had roles with those things that click, that people make phone calls. It had something to do with there's a Pandolf family also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and a DeMoro family, and a Kerr family involved with the policing there, also with places in Newington, the policing of store shopping centers, and also with military that are involved with drugs and medicines crimes, identity thefts, and frauds. And they make instances, they have people call up complaints to the police. They have police wait and pretend they're measuring things. And they're leaving out, they're using time all the way too fast, too slow, to leave out the recorded roles of the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, with timed collusion on and off our campuses, remote uses of mayors through time, their roles with agencies and their lawyers, ones with badges on and off Wethersfield town offices, their roles with Afghanistan families on and off Trinity College, same ones involved state police families. See, this is all that tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, WFSB, threatening and preventing me and others from making statements about what led up to the World Trade Center attack, and since it actually, because they also have roles recorded with the investigators of the military, with a whole bunch of people from Wethersfield, Connecticut, who are involved with Central Connecticut State University, with fact treatment nature-oriented predicate acts, and identity thefts and frauds, instances, and falsified police reports, and other natures of predicate acts and wrongdoings and sequence shifts, illusions, roles, in a whole bunch of different cases, and depositions, and uses of lawyers too, and not for the motivations that are apparent, because they make people hurt people because they need to, that they're being used remotely because of how they've been typing things for years since they were kids, or having people do that for them also. And everyone's self-valuing, everyone speaking through others, everyone being attached to fabricated words. So they prevent mandated law with Facebook page stewards of the campuses. They're getting away with it because also of the acting coaches in the various departments of Central Connecticut State University has families involved with the intelligence community that are also individually grouped and together recorded how criminally foreign influenced, and in the past having been roles with weird illusions with their doctors and with even their mental health doctors, but even their physical doctors. And it all has roles a whole bunch of ways, all the way from Old Wethersfield, Church Street, all along Main Street, with locations of that, all near, they're tied to that, all the way up from Wethersfield to Central Connecticut State University, 3 towns over, relative to how you're looking at. And it's, so that's the one with Paul Manafort Drive. Each side of the location of the campus, they have the lie progressions employed and having been employed. They have the intelligence community with men and women who had roles with Chris Walters, facilitating him the roles, real or made up, with prostitution, and with things like that, and then they pretend that you had something to do with it when you're trying to talk about it. And at the time, they had walls with worse natures of organized crime with kids from my town. Now, Chris Walters went to a private school. They were using him. One of the things he was recorded, confessed, confirmed, demonstrated for everyone speaking to others. He's involved with predicate acts with an O'Brien family. Also involved with Central Connecticut State University with a whole bunch of names, and with the Delafair family. I mean, with the DeMoro families. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with, between cousins, real or made up, confessed, like sexual relations, as the ones that are involved with identity thefts or frauds against me, also within a Pruzzi family, a whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University, and who were in my 6th grade class, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed was involved with predicate acts that Mr. Pruzzi or wrongdoing that was involved with communications with Mr. Pruzzi using my name criminally and using faked audio and video into databases. I don't that these teachers know about or not. There's also Quinnipiac University involved with the Kevin Harris and a Rixion Faglione, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed involved with prosecutors and judges that were fabricating audio and video on and off all sides of the campuses with these groups. And why? Because when they were kids, they were putting me in fake locations with these people. And they were telling them to spread lies and sequence chefs since I was in grammar school. Because they time where people who aren't in the classes with their kids, and or the ones that are criminally foreign influence, which are themselves too, differentially, constantly. And what are they going to say? They're going to pretend it's about their roles with that legitimately, where they are legitimately with acting coaches and their family members and their neighbors involved. They also have actual predicate acts and uses of their roles with a whole bunch of natures of doctors and ones with badges, interagencies. So we have types of jobs, we have types of sense and sensibilities with those same repeating narratives. You can't pretend to be against racism and legitimately and pretend not to know that, realize how hundreds of nations were faked together, and pretending not to realize that by pretending it's just about white or black. Pretending that they don't care about. That's the only thing they're capable of countering is if someone says a name to someone else, and they leave out the sequence shifts because of how there's complete possession of offensive evidence racketeering that black and white families have on and off the state judicial branch offices, and with people on and off body dumping spots since before that was found out, and their uses of those spots next to it, everyone's names. Anyone heard my name tied to the body dumping? Not tied to the bodies or tied to that serial killer is also recorded involved with the courts and prisons that put him away with that location. Also involved with the schools that train those prisons interstates, like Central Connecticut State University in Britain. Gail King is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by WFSB and others with the intelligence community of various natures and the people involved with foreign and domestic military, and deans and their family members. I don't know it all. Sought me out, made all these confessions. And speaking through others that also recorded with the military, involved with Hartford courts, have employees and their intimate relations and their business relations and neighbors. Also next to schools, involved with predicate acts, with locations, with offensive evidence perception racketeering, and worse, child abuses roles, identity thefts and frauds roles. And as the people that were involved, Connecticut, interbranch and private, and inter-campuses, inter-cities, connected through time too. These are also people that are roles with people who answer phones, that are involved with people and their family members on the child offender registry, and their neighbors and their uses of corners near streets. I don't know who lives at the corners on Gridswell Street and Fairlane Drive. But a whole bunch of confessions were made about the corners, and demonstrations were made about the corners involved with offensive evidence, racketeering, identity thefts, and frauds. And people involved with Trinity College, and Central Connecticut State University, roles fabricating audio and video, and then pretending people don't speak clear after they attach those to fake conversations. And they put fake conversations with the people who are going to tell about that. So there were also a whole bunch of private people involved with the confessions of the Hartford courts and of the New Britain Superior Court that were affected to me with off-campuses locations, like where the serial killer is. And they were drawn out conversations. And there were also, different military, like Eric Burgess and different military families, like Justin Kovinskis. That's one of the people involved all along the road from Wethersfield to Central Connecticut State University, and involved with the uses of all sides of that campus for fact-cheating nature, identity thefts and frauds instances roles that also count as falsified police report roles that also count as uses of the falsified police reports roles, and of their roles with the KKK Confederate flag themed offensive evidence reception, racketeering, identity thefts and frauds too, because these are also people with black and white female judges and officers intercities and types of them that have been forging names and switching names on falsified police reports. Uses of the systems like, I'm just making this arrest because I saw it, someone wrote it into the system, so I'm making the arrest, and they don't let anybody talk because they have even people before they're charged, even if they definitely have innocent people they pretended they hurt. No wonder everyone says that they were innocent. They're changing everything, and they're building upon the lie progressions that came from whatever was involved with locations first. And then it was sustained that everyone was involved with the database locations further. And they were needed to hide from and hurt and value that, the correlation of everyone to discern that, because nature gives us means to do that. So they hide lie progressions further and further at all locations. And they're even shown means and needs to hide it preemptively, as the names from Connecticut involved a whole bunch of ways, through the insurance ways, like with a Joseph Dennis, and others involved with all along New Britain Avenue in Hartford, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with judges with criminal uses of how New Britain Avenue branches. So we're going to address how we're in a trap, and no one lets us talk about that. They want to blame it on racism because they have an advantage. Nations grouped, all fake together. Countries A through Z, suits and ties with the colonization roles. Those were these cultures that are now pretending they're liberators. See, those are the ones who put those laws like that because they want to keep out memory of the ancient republic. That's why they stuck it on England. That's why they stuck it on Italy and pretending other. And they got Italy and England involved with it because that locations, areas, states, criminally foreign influence, they don't let a leader be anything other. That means criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and collusion simultaneously to all locations. You think they care about they care about American rights and voting? They don't care about voting. That's how they can pretend to be able on America, honestly, anyway. If they cared about legislation, we're trying to make change through legislation. If they had legislation that was anything that our souls really cared about, they would tell us. They would tell us what it is. People have objections to it. We would supplement what gets hurt by it. And, we'll get everybody on the same page. You don't talk about hunger and leave out the significance of let's talk facts. Where did you read that? They took away the food of everybody. rather than have it available and defended clean earth, native pure, cultivated, having been they make the ancients, in other words, and they make the Native Americans, they say, oh, we don't know what was there, theory about what was there. They were lying about what was there. That's what we know is recorded. So what they're saying is theory and what's more probable, because we're the ones in college. These people are offensively keeping each science tactically abridged to keep the sense and sensibilities of a certain type of person. That's not going to care. They're going to pretend, they're going to take multi-front. They pretend like they don't realize the people who answer the phones for the news, and the people who work their Facebook pages, and the people who police it. They're in collusion, and for example, using their different sides to get over on the time treatments, because they're hiding the finite, active, and progressive lies and sequence shifts, illusions, uses of them roles to all locations. You see crime on the rise, and you see violent crime. They don't even make the distinction between crime and violent crime because they are involved with it. Every time they put lies into databases, they are in collusion with other people who did that. And it's often, mostly people not even realizing, but they're self-valuing roles with it, and they're preventing others means to speak about it. They're forcing problems to off-campuses, on-campuses stay in collusion. Now, this is also because of the study material of the people at each age of campus, sickly distinctly, relative to where they're actually recorded predicate acts, delivery system, methods, bound roles by a method that they're preventing people free speech offensively from having. Also, per their uses of the family members of the leaders of the kids and of the leaders of mayoral town offices, etc. So then they keep things going before courts that have their family members, the people that work, the family members, the people that work for them, everyone. They already had all the with big world, small world talk, criminally foreign influence, uses of people's names, sequence treatments, information left out, added, criminally. Uses, whether they realize or not. In other words, they started these conversations too. That's part of the sequence shifts, why it's so relevant too. Because these are people in through time, intercities. New Britain, Connecticut has been through time, involved with people involved with child abuses and predicate acts on my street. And I could say the predicate acts because they're mail crimes, wire crimes. Also, where they brought up the theme of 9/11, there's also a Dan Keene, who was a nice kid, and his father was a nice kid. A Joe DeMoro and others associated with a Joe DeMoro and a Mike Kerr, who said they shared a Heather Hansen. They pretended they didn't like each other to her, but then they pretended other to themselves. But it's also involved with overt criminal enterprises and agencies involved with them, and something to do with a Mr. Abruzzi and a whole bunch of confessions of people from Wethersfield kids through time involved with Central Connecticut State University, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with abuses of kids, all kinds of ways, and with males and females, because they are used remotely with their fact treatments. They pretend it's either to fund the police or to fund, because they don't want us to be able to speak about anything honestly. In other words, they don't want the police to be run by anybody who's not going to be a fake, pretending they need to defend the name of police, when correlation / discorrelation shows the police forms, the branch of government, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, how they were bound and exploited that way was the subject and is the subject of American history as a quality of fact treatment nature and irrelevant. So we have people pretending because they know words that others don't know, like the guy pretending to be against racism, pretending, and he's saying, oh, this is some academics or whatever he said, whatever terminology he used on Fox News, the famous actor, saying they know what you guys don't know about critical race theory. So everyone's fighting using other people's names, calling people names that psychology has, and with delusions. Psychology's delusions one thing, and there is another. Delusions speak for what's black or white, and the causes of uses of that originally and still. Self-value rolls with it. People that needed to defend their roles with perception at each age of factory, they left out too many things, boxings. So they keep women, for example, always hearing about men through other men first that are not those men, or through women first that are not those men, and that is maintained criminally foreign influence. It is effectively used to maintain their complete possession. They even have the gay groups, effectively the possession of the racketeering with these people, also on off the locations next to state capitals, pretending passions and emotions, because their roles with database racketeering, with pretending not to understand people with simple sentences, because of the judges' roles and the police forms roles, and the overt criminal enterprises. See, they're needing people to keep sequence shifts, quality of fact, cheap in nature out, all as victims different ways though, and countering it as predators, employed that way by the breaching method, different ways though. So in other words, the motivations and the methods of the courts are one thing distinct, but they're also non-distinct, and in collusion with the people, with the killers, and with the people with the what led up to them shooting on a mass scale, like in New York City. Science never spoke for New York City. What hurt those kids before they do those things, and the adults, And then, I don't want to try to use people's names. I'm going to use that guy's name because he tells us not to speak. The same guy is going to pretend he's for free speech. Oh, they're just testing. You know how many things that sociologists are involved with? Sociologists have a huge role. And I'm not saying because it's a bad drugs and medicine. I mean, drugs and medicine is not good. But where it is good, like medicines that people need it, they have those in the research and everything like that. They have a criminally foreign influence. They still have it rolls with the database racketeering, identity racketeering, economics racketeering, where they don't have the right to speak about business anyway. They're speaking anyway. Then they want to get mad when they don't know what to say, because they have to take the directions through private and interbranch positions, titles. Those are criminally foreign influence hierarchies originally and still. The people that needed to speak for what caused slavery, they need to talk about a predicate acts delivery system method, because those were predicate acts sustained with slavery. Predicate acts sustained, and it's on the side on the side of the those are fake sides, and increasingly everyone was not and is not the words of that are native pure. That words of evolutions, fruits and gifts, that which is a science, that is forced, theory, the theory of evolution. Evolution science is real. What's going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, and also positive unto itself. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments. We know that, there have been people that said, oh, this is positive, but it was really insidious. And it was really in collusion with a great overt evil. So insidious natures of positive and negative are leveraged, and they're blaming other things, others themselves. So on a mass scale, the people that are doing the worst things through different methods, fact, cheaply nature-oriented predicate acts, identity thefts and frauds, methods, roles, exploiting the exploited systems, doesn't have time but to use time always too fast, simultaneously too slow, and the training, the delusions of it manifest. When they speak about critical race theory, they have to be in the background too, pretending they're studying people and things like that. They're sick. They're sick. It's the identity, ground locations, collusions, the data reception, racketeering, roles. It's the roles of the databases with this. It's the roles with the uses of their lie progression where they're pretending they can't correlate things like that. Like people with all that people, like Spain knows that, didn't they conquer the Amazon women too? Like, in other words, they were, and they wouldn't have been that evil if they weren't locations, areas, states, criminally foreign influence. That's not, that they were part of a republic once that was revealed as an identity of sophistication that wouldn't have and couldn't have been revealed that way. English was revealed by identity of sophistication still being obfuscated because we still have sciences that are abridged. So they can't afford what English was revealed to teach because it is a measurement of what is actually recorded, that which is self-generating, and its actual identity of relationship to itself, which is actually discernible, invisible but still discernible, one way alone, however. Anything that's, in other words, there are distinct identities of invisible, and we'll examine this. The order of sequence true is one. The order of the finite, the order of the active, the order of the progressive. Like, what was the progressive value? Not per the people who built New York City and all that. Leaving that out. I mean, not leaving anything out. But what you guys are leaving out is what made only fathomable suburbs from here to Russia, since before cars, having been employed again before the torture to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, natures. They can blame other things while they're employing the remedies as breaching screen, roles, tools, self-value, oh, well, we can make money this way. But the people don't have food. So we could just make this river, make this pond, we'll have food all year. We have to get everyone on the system. And this system we know was not just racist. Lawyers are telling people to record. I'm not a lawyer, but they're recorded. We need them. That we need lawyers. And they know that, just like they know we need police. And so it's roles with where there's differential criminal foreign influences. In other words, when there are witch trials, it's because there was a preaching method that made everyone victim roles criminally foreign influenced. But they were the breaching method tools too, and weapons. They were criminally foreign influenced courts that were reacting the way the breaching method need them to. And that's including when people respond to it today, especially our educators. They make theories on such. Whether it was real or made up, it was recorded and is recorded involved with the obfuscation of American history as it actually unfolded. And as actually George Washington and our founding parents actually had to leave slavery entrenched in the North and in the South. Relevant. So, it was designed, slavery, by black and white and other countries, that police forms that were criminally foreign influence used remotely, defending themselves and others, and that in ways nature would continue to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And so they would have to hide that. So they increasingly had to become dependent upon the logic of the breaching methods. Archetypal criminal enterprise, method. As methods now so propagated through and as a whole bunch of breaching screens employed. Actual motivations ulterior motivations for natures of evil and of positive, insidious positive treatments, and of legitimate positive treatments, and of legitimate evil, all inclusion anyway. That's why we have to understand what was sustained, not one has trained. We can get a lot of money, and I'll donate the method and the idea to do it. I don't know if we should start on YouTube first. We call it YouTube Ground. All gather around. And I don't know how we have to make it so the money, no one can touch it, but we can measure it. And we talk about it so we can make it. In other words, taxes aren't going to do it, and their legislation's not going to do it on time. Them pretending jobs are going to, even if they made enough jobs to fix what they call poverty, which is, that's an understatement. That's a shock and awe reaction understatement. And that's exploited too. See, everyone just gives up. There are too many fronts leveraged upon each person at once, no matter who you are. And so the people want to make difference about who they are, because in other words, they're being told to make difference. That's why the same exact narratives, they're pretending, that's why they end up, it's democracy. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about the republic. Where that's not true, they're incapable of defending their own souls, native pure, no matter who you are. That integrity that causes evolution's fruits and gifts. It does not work without the identity of grounds, identity of relationship. Don't let government tell you that they can't have fish growing, freshwater fish growing everywhere. At the deep parts, they have catfish. In the they have spot trout, maybe bass. They have worms that just keep growing. They crawl into the water. They just keep crawling into the water when you have the soil next to a pond, right? And then when they put different soil down, that brings down the worms. The population goes down. They have different food sources. See, the ancients, they wouldn't have observed. They knew will cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. The contrast between socialism, and communism and capitalism. I'm a capitalist first, but capitalism isn't free. And to get it free, you have to admit and you have to value why we are socialism. We are a socialist free market economy. And that's because we're a fake economy. That is still inclusion. Leveraged inclusion with predicate acts roles and wrongdoing roles against our own citizens of each age of fact-shaping nature. This is a game that is self-perfected. Identity thefts and frauds. So there are also other ways they have news media associated with people with Trinity College, associated with the Department of Motor Vehicles with a Tom Perone and a Danielle Perone. We're influenced also with neighbors of theirs to roles with identity thefts and frauds, acting so people can pretend lies about what came before that and pretend to know me. And with their roles with uses of coaches, of teams, and of social workers. People who are going to be spoken to in contexts that never going to be brought back, but in contexts where other people's names are brought up. Oh, I heard this. They're using that to keep our agencies, criminally foreign influence delusions, wrought. Roles with the overt criminal enterprises and with the private ones that are not their legitimate roles with them. So they forge names and switch names interbranch. Weathersfield police are also on my street involved with predicate acts and identity thefts and frauds, mail crime roles, and child abuses roles, and worse, through time, with the Sklar family. I never saw them on my street in my life. They've been pretending behind my back to know me with people involved with locations around the state judicial branch offices and tied to body dumping spots, real or made up, involved with actual predicate acts of the news, where they don't have the right to make up things, but they've been making it up. They've been using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. There's a guy who looked exactly like James Comey involved with New Britain Superior Court's recorded roles with various natures of predicate acts and evidence reception racketeering, and involved with former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities, leading up to the World Trade Center and since, because I caught them also with uses of locations like at the end of exits, and as the entrance to exits too, and uses of intercities locations where their roles with lie progressions tied to also through time known was that and how overt criminal enterprises and corruption was involved with police forms and military. But they pretend that, oh, but we have to defend the name because like the NSA, the FBI, those are the only ones that can protect us. In other words, and they want to force equality of fact treatment nature doesn't let exception nature demonstrate. Obviously, the people who speak for the law are still criminally foreign influenced relative to those examples that are ground locations, like with the people stacking in New York City. I'm not forgetting you, the rest of the human species in other countries. We have from here to Russia, the suburbs are designed to cause negative value nature progressions, let alone acts in nature, let alone the people in those high-rise places. All exceptions, exception nature are engineered to roles for those narratives. Relative measuring, self-cultivating, measuring and maintaining the breaching method, the identity thefts of our founding parents, self-valued, criminally foreign influence. Quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. That's what Marbury versus Madison means. Does collusion, self-valuing the real causes of negative value nature progressions, action nature is blamed on other things other than selves, and having been blamed on them, that's sustained, it has excuses after. Those kids from New York are only going to make mistakes because their schools, private database relationships, their family members, their conversations are being and having their fact treatment nature, their wire crime methods, acts. In other words, their treatment, their uses of CRT and other theories into science are sequence shift, cover up roles and styles and natures of imposition upon us each. So one must teach free speech. But they're preventing mandated law. They get away with it by pretending not to understand people and then keep fabricating more audio and video, pretending not to realize that and how courts, judges are involved with the agencies involved with Cuban families, also next to Hartford Hospital, with overt criminal enterprises, even if they're undercover too with the police forms, with a whole bunch of Wethersfield police like DeMorros and the Scalera family, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved. Attaching me, they also attached Saudi families and me to fake words and natures of ties to themselves. There's also an Italian girl in Orlando, Florida, who's one of the ones the Scalera families involved with people when I was a little kid, involved a whole bunch of ways criminally foreign influence predicate acts, natures of crimes with kids, as ones offensively pretending to be against such, calling into police complaints for things they were involved with. Also about how they get involved with each other's. Oh, this is CIA, this is DNA, this is They also have forensics locations involved with the same houses, involved with predicate acts with them that are wire crimes and recorded. Also tied to their motivations to pretend not to understand people. They also haven't responded to the confessions when a Rob Rodriguez confessions and then confirmations on Facebook also brought up is also one that brought up the name Scalora and the principal child offenders campus who wasn't proven yet to be that, but there was more child abuses then and now, and there are more women roles with that, including doctors forging names, switching names, fabricating things, fake mental diagnosis with men in their family, fake conversations with their kids in their family involved. They have generations of a Leahy family involved with all kinds of weird intelligence racketeering and identity thefts and frauds, making fake Facebook pages, pretending to be me, pretending people don't cooperate with the police because the police are fabricating audio and video. They put me in fake conversations with them first. That's the subject. They put me in fake conversation with one of the Mendez police brothers. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the private school kids, attaching me to fake locations and natures of ties to themselves and other people, and complete strangers. Also, per their roles all along that route from Weathersfield to Central Connecticut State University, on off Paul Manafort Drive, and then locations next to it, and on off each side of that campus, and the locations next to it have been used where we are value progression, where they have people using names like there's I don't know, Jennifer Socia, I don't know her original maiden name, and Jim Socia, and I think it's a Chris White, I don't know his name. They were involved with trying to make exceptions, trying to make an exception to appear other. The Jim I only saw one time, walking by me with the Jen Socia. That was the second time I saw her at Central Connecticut State University. And the first time was involved with a Ray Reynolds. Also, they have medical families and medical with the military that is currently foreign influence, with the overt criminal enterprises. They also have other roles with Korean families and people associated with a Taekwondo place that is intercities involved. Also with families all along Route 3 through time, involved with identity thefts and frauds as relevant predicate acts roles, and falsified police reports roles, and roles with uses of such that are even worse. But even worse than that are uses of identity ground locations. Also uses of everyone pretending they're hating me because I have to use their names. They brought up their names. So that's also all part of their sequence shifts roles. Whole bunch of ways they switch sequences. So they have WFSB and other news media have their private, retired and standing interbranch, also criminally foreign influence. Also the family members of state police and other people private that work with them. Interstates. Already in the past, instances and police reports and calls to police and their reactions, they're locked knave. They're locked criminally foreign influence. They're locked in collusion with and as drugs and medicines crimes and crime methods. Not just of the known natures of them, but also as the people countering it. Because they've been using those databases to put fake things in there. Fake uses of drugs and alcohol to people that don't even have it. Because of the natures of how, and the method, because of the roles with the method that keeps our agencies and their family members and all private and everything criminally foreign influence. You need to hide live aggressions. You need to hide from, you need to value actual correlation by what is actually recorded, by what actually puts people in the classes they put them in, and the people next to them, because they employed that to uses of that interbranch, as the ones interbranch that are recorded as actually recorded, which is criminally foreign influence. So these are the only representatives we've been capable of having produced to send to Washington, D.C., and to the World Trade Center. And as their roles in conjunction in a whole bunch of ways, like with California, etc. They bring up the border, when they are used, the Democrats and the Republicans are used to measure and to maintain
self-cultivated. You know, when they bring up, they try to measure each other using the word border, the subject treatment. See, they are shocked and awed subject treatments, leaving out and having left out exceptions in exception nature consciously.